So good evening everybody, it's 6 o'clock and can I welcome you to the first meeting of the Corporate Issues and Reform Overview and Scrutiny panel. The first item on the agenda, we have apologies from Councillor Colin McLaren and Councillor Callum Nolan. Item 2, appointment of chair. So I'd like to ask for nominations for the chair of Corporate Issues and Reform Scrutiny Committee for 2019-20 municipal year. Do we have any nominations?
Can I nominate Councillor Tim Pickstone, please?
Do we have a seconder of that?
No. I spoke to you already, Joanne. In view of the fact that the other scrutiny meeting was inchoate, so they haven't actually got a chair at the moment, can we suggest that Tim becomes chair for this meeting and to maintain the 2-to-1 balance and make sure that we actually have a Conservative on the other scrutiny committee?
Are the committee in agreement with that proposal? Yeah, okay. Okay, we move that Councillor Tim Pickstone becomes chair for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, members. So the agenda item 2 is agenda item 3, sorry, is the appointment of vice chair for this year. Do we have any nominations? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I should like to nominate Councillor McGahon, please.
Okay, is that seconded? Yes, thank you, Councillor Morgan. Yeah, thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, brilliant. Congratulations, Councillor McGann. Okay, so the next agenda item is membership for this municipal year, and people will see the list of people there. I think because it's the first meeting of the year, it might be useful if we just quickly whisk around and say hello to each other, if that's all right, just so we all know who we are. So my name's Tim Pickstone. I'm a councillor from Bury, and I represent Holyrood Ward, which is essentially North Prestwich, and I'm a Liberal Democrat.
I'm Andrew Lightfoot. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive at the Combined Authority.
Hi, I'm Joanne Herron. I'm the Statutory Scrutiny Officer for the Combined Authority.
I'm Jamie Fallon. I'm from the Governance and Scrutiny team from the GMCA.
I'm Ben Clay. I'm a Labour councillor for Burnage in Manchester.
Hi, I'm Teresa Smith. I'm from Tameside. I represent Ardenshire and Labour.
Dina Rhiness. I'm Labour Party councillor for Heaton's North Ward on Stockport Council.
I'm Stella Smith. I'm a Labour Party councillor for East Ward in Bury.
Councillor Daniel Birch. I'm a councillor for Udsall in Salford.
John McGann, councillor for Bramhall South and Woodford on Stockport Council.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Bob Allen from Bolton Council, and I represent the Heaton and Lostock Ward.
I'm Dave Morgan. I'm the Conservative councillor for Hale Barnes in Trafford.
David Jolly. I'm Labour councillor for Barton Ward in Salford.
Councillor Ray Dutton, North Haywood Rochdale, substitute member.
I'm Councillor Anne Duffield, Longford Ward member in Trafford, which covers Stretford and Old Trafford, and Labour councillor. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Councillor Joanne Marshall for Wigan Council and the Ward of Tilsley.
Good evening, Tony Hunter, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, Director of Protection.
Hello, Dawn Docks, Deputy Chief Fire Officer.
Good evening, Jim Wallace, Chief Fire Officer, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service.
Hi, I'm Liz Tracy. I'm the Monitoring Officer for the Combined Authority.
The Treasurer of the Combined Authority.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So just so people understand what's happening tonight, we're hoping to have a relatively brief formal meeting with the cameras on, down to the end of agenda item 9, which is after we've considered the Greater Manchester Strategy performance update, and then we'll essentially be turning the cameras off and have a more informal presentation about the role of this committee, about the work programme, and a sort of an open discussion between ourselves about what we want to see on the work programme for this year. So hopefully it will not take too long to get to the end of agenda item 9, and we can turn the cameras off and have a more informal discussion. So some other bits of housekeeping. People will have a member's code of conduct and annual declaration form, or the declaration form, in front of you. So if people can either fill that in tonight, or if people prefer, can it be sent electronically if people prefer that? But we need to send that back as soon as possible. And this is in addition to the ones we have that we fill in as members of individual authorities, obviously. We then get to the subcommittee terms of reference. Are there any changes to that from previous years, or it's just to note? There's no change to that unless anybody's got any questions. Okay, so we can note those. And then on our normal business for today, are there any declarations of interest on any items that are coming up this evening? No? And then in our pack are the minutes of the meeting on the 19th of March, which is some time ago. There's been a few elections since then, hasn't there? Are there any? Can we firstly approve them as a correct record? Anybody wish to move that? Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, agree those as a correct record. And then are there any matters arising that people want to raise from those minutes? Councillor Clay.
It's also the meeting that was cancelled afterwards. There was a report on the fire service, which I'm assuming that would be something we'd look at in the work programme following, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. So I think there's obviously a major issue happening within the fire service at the moment, so I very much hope that we can address that when we talk about the work programme, so that we address that properly at a meeting soon, if that's okay. Any other matters arising? Okay, thank you. So our next agenda item is the Greater Manchester Strategy Implementation Plan and Performance Report, which you are going to speak to, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So you have before you the latest 6-monthly update against the targets contained in the Greater Manchester Strategy that was adopted in 2017. This has been signed up to by the combined authority, all 10 local authorities, health partners, the LEP, voluntary third sector representatives. This is as I said, a 6-monthly report that highlights progress against the 10 priorities and specifically looks at targets that cover the period from April 2018 to March 2020. And this report covers performance between October 18 and March 19, that 6-month period. In terms of the terms of reference of the committee, there are 2 priorities contained within the annex that are relevant to this committee's terms of reference, and historically there have been more detailed discussions around these policy areas. The first one is priority 1 in the annex, children starting school ready to learn, an agenda around early years, improving school readiness rates across Greater Manchester, and priority 10, which is on page 40 of the annex, that covers our objectives around the ageing agenda, the age-friendly Greater Manchester. So I'll just focus on those briefly. Progress against priority 1, children starting school ready to learn. There's a vast amount of work underway across Greater Manchester and the 10 districts in this area. It's been a significant focus of the Greater Manchester Reform Board, and there have been now 2 summits, Greater Manchester summits, on this agenda involving practitioners, independent experts. The relevant government minister attended the last one. Focus has been maintained on the Greater Manchester early years model. This is a model that's being rolled out across all 10 areas, and that's starting to demonstrate an improvement in the key measure in this area, which is the school readiness of children in reception. There's a national measure that exists, good level of development, and we, for the first time in a number of years, started to see an improvement in relation to the national average on that indicator. In terms of other initiatives that are underway, progress is advancing on practitioner training in this area, and proposals are imminent around an early years workforce academy. Health partners are heavily involved in this. The role of health visitors alongside early years professionals in all settings is a priority for this theme. And this early years workforce academy at a Greater Manchester level is designed to ensure that we build on the training opportunities that already exist, but advance the development of that workforce and invest in that workforce, given how critical those professionals, volunteers and parents are in this space. There's been close working with the BBC, and a national pilot was launched in the last month, which will be available on the BBC website, demonstrating how training materials can be disseminated across practitioners and parents as well. The focus for that work with the BBC was the role of parents in improving the school readiness position. So some good progress there, and in terms of the indicators, improvements being made, non-red. Clearly take any questions on that when the debate opens up. In terms of priority 10, the age-friendly agenda, again, the Greater Manchester political lead for this, Brenda Warrington, has attended this scrutiny committee in the past, and will no doubt again in the future to talk in more depth about the raft of activity that's underway, but good progress being made with a national organisation, the Centre for Ageing Better, who have invested money in Greater Manchester to support this agenda. We're currently in the process of reviewing these measures, the best that we had when the strategy was pulled together, but as with any measure, there are limitations. So there's a piece of work underway to ensure that as we move forward, we measure what's important and not just what we've measured historically. And we'll be in a position at a forthcoming meeting to talk about that in more depth. This priority cuts across a number of other policy areas. The red there relates to hospital admissions due to falls, where we've seen less progress than we had hoped for. There's an explanation in the box at the bottom of the table in terms of why that's where it's at. There is more recently a proposal to advance this agenda, not just from a kind of Greater Manchester level, but what does it mean in places across the 10 localities. So there's work in all districts on this age-friendly agenda, and pilot areas being identified in all local authorities to test some of the policy around age-friendly and to build on experience and learning and disseminate that across the 10 districts. So good progress being made overall, but I'll pause there and take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So just so people understand, I'm assured that the other scrutiny committees are focusing on points 2 to 9, if that makes sense, and the two that we need scrutinised are 1 and 10, which is why Andrew presented those. So I guess are there any questions on those? And the other thing is starting to think about issues that we might want to pick up in the work programme when we invite either the political or the officer specialists in that area along to a future meeting. So it's starting to think about that as well. But are there any questions or comments on those sections? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. On priority 1, which was the early years school readiness, as you probably know, there's been a task and finish group operating through the whole of the last municipal year from this committee on that topic, and I think myself and Councillor Duffield are the only people here tonight from that group. But we did do a final report that was submitted by Councillor Guariento from Stockport at the very end of the municipal year, and I don't think it ever really came to the committee as such. So I'm wondering if that can be put on the programme for us to consider in conjunction with the dashboard. And in respect to the dashboard, I was just wondering, looking at the graph, and although it's down as an amber and we have improved the school readiness, it's still about the same percentage below the national average, isn't it? The national average has also improved. I wondered if you'd like to comment on that.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And we should receive that report, shouldn't we? So we'll to the next meeting. Okay, there you go. Do you want to answer that, Andrew?
The last Reform Board discussion that had representatives from all 10 districts, and actually the Cabinet Secretary attended that meeting. There's a lot of interest in this area. You're right, the gap with the national average is what's important ultimately are young people in Greater Manchester benefiting from the same opportunities as young people from other areas. So whilst we can show improvement, it's the relative position that's critical. There are, as you'll be aware, demographic challenges that a place like Greater Manchester faces, but notwithstanding that, the view at the moment, and this perhaps needs to be tested when we get into this in depth at a future meeting, is that the reasons for this lag in school readiness are many and historic and intergenerational. So turning round this measure in 18 months was always going to be a hard target. But the system has been mobilised. That's not just early years practitioners within local authorities. It's the health and social care system, so the role of children's social care, the role of health visitors, the role of other partners, the voluntary third sector, the BBC, unleashing the potential of parents is all part of this. So and there are some proxy indicators that sit behind this that are showing a more rapid improvement, which hasn't yet hit this measure. Because this is an annual measure as well. So next year, when we get the new intake of 5-year-olds into reception, there is an assumption, and it's evidenced to some degree by the proxy indicators that we can talk about in more detail at a subsequent meeting. We're anticipating a closing of that gap with the national average.
Thanks very much.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Dutton. Thank
Thank you, Chair. Being a substitute member, I'm able to ask, hopefully, the stupid questions, perhaps. I'm not used to this committee. But I was just wondering your figures on the priority 10, where you've got admissions of falls. I just wondered, does that include the falls within the hospital, people that fall out of the beds? With the elderly population we've got going into our hospitals now, certainly my surgeries in the last 12 months, I've had about 4 people reporting that their ageing parents have fell while in hospital. I just wonder if those facts and figures were available within the report somewhere. Thank you.
There will be, but whether that figure includes falls within a hospital from involving a patient who's already been admitted, I'm not sure on. So I will come back to the committee on that. I'll circulate a response to that. Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much then, Andrew. And we get to see this every 6 months, but obviously it may be we are diving deeper into some of these areas in between, I guess, isn't it? But we'll see the whole thing in 6 months. Good, thank you very much. So, unless anybody disagrees, that's the sort of the end of the very short end of the formal meeting today. And so we can turn our cameras off if anybody's watching.